The Confederate government tried to pursue various avenues in enlisting foreign support for their country and their cause in this war. They sent emissaries to Mexico City, to northern Mexico, to Paris, to the Pope in Rome, but most importantly to London. Both sides knew that the most important ally they could possibly have was Great Britain. Davis and the Confederate government certainly tried hard to win British recognition and support. He was hoping that the Prime Minister, Lord Palmerston, would quickly see that recognizing the Confederacy would be in his interest and getting Southern cotton would be in his interest. I think one of the failings of Confederate diplomacy was the over-reliance on what is called King Cotton. Essentially, the Southerners felt that Southern cotton was so important to Great Britain that the British would do virtually anything to get Southern cotton. That was not true, at least in 1861. The big cotton manufacturers had surplus of cotton. They actually were quite pleased that the Confederates decided to stop shipment of Southern cotton because they jacked up their own prices and made quite a killing. Great Britain did not recognize the Confederacy because it didn't need Southern cotton, at least certainly not for the first year of the war. And there was a lot of feeling that the Confederates were going to win anyway and without British help. So if the British could reap the benefits of the United States being split in half without doing anything to achieve that, and thus without antagonizing the United States, then why not stay out of the war? After the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, people in Britain were able to see the war more as slavery versus anti-slavery. And the general feeling in Europe, including Great Britain, was against slavery. So that tended to put more Europeans and more British people towards sympathy for the North and for the Union in this war.
Although the English government did not support the Confederacy, many English businessmen and private citizens did. We have examples in our collection of items brought through the blockade. The goods that were brought over from Britain and other European nations to the Confederacy consisted not only of items to be used by the Army, such as rifles, cloth for uniforms all ready-made, ammunition, gunpowder, lead to make mini balls, percussion caps by the millions, some buttons that were made for the Confederate Navy, but also items that were used by the civilians, clothing, children's toys, dolls for little girls, almost anything that you can name that you would walk into a store to try to find today was brought through the blockade and either sold to civilians or sent to the Army. All of the Confederate ships except those ironclads that were built locally were built in England. The blockade runners were mostly built in England and Scotland. The Confederates also were able to have built surreptitiously two of the most famous commerce raiders, one the CSS Florida and the other the Alabama. And the Shenandoah, the last Confederate commerce raider, which lowered the last flag of an active Confederate command in the harbor at Liverpool on November 6, 1865, which was built in Scotland. What they had to worry about was the Foreign Enlistment Act that England had passed in 1819. And this law stated that a shipbuilder could not build and arm a ship for another belligerent nation. So this is what they did. They had the ships built and they got them out to sea where they had them armed and equipped outside of British territory, which did not violate British law. In 1871, the United States and Britain met at a treaty conference in Washington, D.C. This treaty conference decided among other things, that the United States and England would go to arbitration to be held in Geneva in 1872 to decide the damages that were wrought by the Confederate commerce raiders, which sank or destroyed more than 200 American merchant ships. The Geneva arbitration in June of 1872 decided that Britain would be required to pay the United States $15.5 million in September of 1873.